What's up, everyone? It's me, your boy Ryan Flowers, aka Clutch Sports Talk, and welcome to another episode of NFL Matchups. As usual, we're going to be talking about what we learned this past weekend in the National Football League. And then I'm going to go straight into my Real or Nah segment. And then we're going to look at some previews and predictions for games in Week 7. And then we're going to close out the show with my fantasy impact players. So you guys don't want to miss out. You guys are in the right spots. Let's go.
We're going to be here all day, baby. I like this kind of party. I like this kind of party, baby.
Okay, welcome back to the episode. But before we move on, I got to ask you guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Grid Network. Make sure you do so now. We really appreciate that. Every subscription counts, and it starts with you guys. So appreciate that. All right, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about what we learned from Week 7 around the National Football League. So I got to start with the Cowboys. They got shellacked on Sunday against the Detroit Lions, who came into Jerry's World and just put the BTA, belt to ass, on the Dallas Cowboys. Now, it was Jerry Jones's, I believe it was 82nd, something like that, his birthday. The only thing that got blown out was his team. No candles that day. Now, the Cowboys are going into a bye week, and they got lots to think about. Honestly, this team overall, well, let's just say this. What did we learn? I wouldn't say it's what we learned. It's what we already knew. It was just on full display Sunday afternoon in Dallas. So, like I said, they're going on to a bye week. They come back out of the bye, and they believe they go on the road to San Francisco. Honestly, it doesn't really look good. Now, they started off the year, 0-3 this season at home. Actually, 0-4 if you go back to the Green Bay Packer game in the playoffs last season, and they had just been getting smoked. Now, let's just start with the defensive side of things. Listen, this defense is not good at all. And a lot of people, especially Cowboys fans, are, oh, well, we're missing Micah. Oh, we're missing DeMarcus Lawrence. Oh, Kendrick was hurt. Listen, Phil, folks, it doesn't matter. This team is devoid of talent. Trayvon Diggs literally forgot how to tackle. And the front seven is just no good, even if you get Micah Parsons back. I'm actually part of this whole party that thinks that maybe you probably need to trade Micah Parsons instead of paying this guy. But that's for another time, for another show, right? But overall, the task does not get easier for this team. Offensively, they've only managed to score 9 points. 9 points this past Sunday against Detroit Lions. None of them were touchdowns. They were all by Brandon Aubrey, their all-star, all-pro kicker, who's probably the best player on the team at this point. And I believe he's accounted for 60 of their 120 points scored this season so far. So he's accounted for 50% of all of their points. The offense is atrocious, which we already kind of knew. Now, there are some delusional Cowboys fans that thought, oh, they'll be all right. We brought back Zeke. Listen, I've seen it on social media before. Someone was saying that Zeke doesn't get enough touches, therefore he can't be productive. Ezekiel Elliott is no longer a productive back in the National Football League. Period. Okay? He's past his prime. Guys like Jerry thought he can bring them back and kind of be disillusioned that he can reconjure 2016, 2017 when Ezekiel Elliott is at the peak of his career. He's no longer that. Rico Dowdle has been on the roster for 5+ seasons, if I'm not mistaken. He's finally getting some chance to run, and then they don't even run the football. I don't know if it's because they can't run the football or they don't want to run the football. The offense is way too pass heavy. It's so one-dimensional and predictable that it's damn near criminal, right? That cannot sit there and throw 40, 50 times a game to who? Right? Legitimate defenses, any standard defense in the National Football League will be able to shut that down. It's only him and CeeDee Lamb, and that's it. Jalen Tolbert is not a legitimate wide receiver number 2. Robert Turpin, or whatever his name is, he's not even a number 3. He's a gimmick kind of player. So this team has tons of problems, and it all starts with the ownership, which we can get into that on another episode for another day, right? But it doesn't get any easier for them. They got home games against the Eagles, Texans, and those Giants. Yes, those Giants who, although in a loss to the Bengals, still look formidable, right? So, Cowboys fans, listen, the season's over. It's done. This team is not good. You had a chance, an opportunity to kind of maybe put up a fight against a contending, not just a contending NFC team, but one of the better teams in the National Football League, and they just pretty much did not show up. Again, this team is very soft. Right? Mentally, physically, they can't do anything right to save your life. So, and at the end of the day, it all revolves around Jerry Jones. Okay. And we already knew this already, but he's more, to me, in my opinion, he's more interested in hearing his team being talked about than actually his team being good. And that's what it boils down to. So Mike McCarthy, people say, oh, they should fire him in the bye week. It doesn't really matter. They're 3-3. It's going to get worse for them. It doesn't matter at the end of the season who's the head coach, because whoever Jerry Jones decides to hire, it's going to be a patsy. It's going to be someone that he can manipulate, which Mike McCarthy was very manipulated because he wanted back in the NFL, and he said what he needed to say in order for Jerry to hire him, and the rest has been history. Oh, well, Ryan, they won about 12 games the last couple seasons. It doesn't matter with this team. It's the same script every season for this team. They win a bunch of games. They blow out, they get blown out, and then they end up losing in the playoffs at some point, whether it's at home. So it doesn't matter for me. And that's why I've jumped off of the fandom for the Dallas Cowboys, because it's no longer worth my time anymore. So that's what we learned, but I guess it's what we already knew with those sorry Dallas Cowboys. Okay, I want to talk about the Chicago Bears next and what we learned from them this past weekend in the National Football League. I think what we've learned is that they have established an offensive identity. Now, that started with the quarterback, Caleb Williams, who threw for 4 touchdowns in a win in London over the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I really love what he was doing. The main thing that stuck out to me was that he was getting more comfortable. You can feel it. He was looking like he was playing basketball. And when I said by playing basketball was that he looked like a point guard out there. He was distributing the ball. He was finding guys like Cole Kmet, Keenan Allen. They were able to run the football. And this is exactly what you want from Caleb Williams, right? The big thing on him is that we know he can throw. We know he has the arm talent. We know he has the skill set. But could he translate it into the NFL? And I think they've done a great job with their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, the past couple of weeks of making it easier, dumbing it down just a little bit for him in order to make those passes, to get those scores. And the Bears are looking somewhat like a legitimate team in the NFC North. Listen, I'm not gonna jump the gun here and just say, oh my God, they're one of the best teams in the NFC. They're progressing, but what I did learn from them is that they're showing growth, and not only that, their young quarterback is showing some growth. Now, I think Caleb Williams still has a ways to go if he wants to be considered one of the Rookie of the Year candidates. Obviously, he will get some nods, right? I get it. In the last couple of weeks, I know we know how society is what have you done for them lately? And he's looked pretty decently the last couple of weeks. So if they can do that moving forward, then he can easily get back in the race with Jaden Downs. Because right now, to me, Jaden Downs, even in a loss, he's still a bit ahead of Caleb Williams at this point. So another thing, what I saw is that him and DJ Moore are starting to develop a strong connection. And that's something that you definitely need with your young quarterback and your star stud wide receiver in DJ Moore. So listen, the Bears, to me, I've liked the Bears. Don't get me wrong. Like, the problem has been the offense. The defense has been really good for the most part. Your head coach is the defensive guy, right? So he goes and gets a coordinator like Shane Waldron to kind of help out with the offense. So if the offense could somehow be more consistent and catch up to the defense, because the defense, is it elite? I wouldn't say it's elite, but it's one of the better defenses in the National Football League. They just needed a consistent play from their offense and more so from their young quarterback. So I like how they're doing it. Caleb Williams looking really solid, passing through tight windows, spreading the ball around. I think getting Keenan Allen back in the lineup definitely helps this club, because then he has another veteran receiver to look at. Listen, don't get me wrong. I think Rome Odunze is going to be pretty good in this league, but he's still a young guy, still figuring things out. When you got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, these are all veterans, guys that have played meaningful minutes in this National Football League. It accounts for something, and it definitely, you're starting to see that now kind of articulate before our very eyes, and hopefully they can keep up this little run that they're going on offensively. And you never know, they may be one of the 4 teams that gets in the playoffs from the NFC North. So is that a hot take? I don't know, but right now it's looking like this is the best one, at least one of the best divisions, if not the best division in football right now today, between the Lions, Vikings, and the Packers. And don't look now, maybe the Bears are on the come up, so we'll have to wait and see. Next, I want to talk about those Philadelphia Eagles. They managed to pull off a 4-point win over those Cleveland Browns. My perception of them really hasn't changed this season. Listen, I thought, honestly, they got the win. A win is a win is a win in National Football League. I get it. But to come off a bye week and still struggle offensively is a little concerning if you are an Eagles fan, right? Their only saving grace was A.J. Brown late in that game. If he doesn't make that miraculous catch and gets things going, maybe the Browns win that game. And listen, it's the Browns that you're playing. Deshaun Watson is horrible this season. The Browns offense is horrible this season. But the Eagles offense is right in line with them. Do you know that the Eagles right now are one of the only remaining teams to not have scored any points in the first quarter? Like that's crazy. You've played what, 5 games now, and you haven't scored any points in the first quarter, I believe that's the stat that I read. That's a little negligent, right? Defense, not all excited about the defense in itself. It's a bend don't type of break situation with them, but offensively, they got to get things going. You look at their roster, you would assume that they would be better. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I know they're both coming off injuries. I know Brown had the hamstring. Devontae had the concussion. Jalen Hurts, like, it looks like he's regressed the last couple seasons, right? Ever since almost winning that Super Bowl, being in the MVP talks, he just hasn't looked the same. Now, again, it all points back to the offensive coaches that he had in Shane Steichen, who's no longer there anymore. He's now in Indianapolis, right? They bring in Kellen Moore. The offense still sucks. So, again, coming off of a bye, I would have thought they would have been way more prepared, especially offensively, because you should be. You had an extra week to prepare for a team that's not really that good in the first place. So a lot of people say they got lucky to beat the Browns. I don't want to say luck. Overall, they still were the better team, but I don't think the Eagles are any better than what they were first week of the season. I mean, honestly, I think, and then some people may say, "Oh, well, you're hating." The only bright spot for me with them is Saquon Barkley. Like, and you got to give him the ball. You got to feed this guy the ball. He's been probably the only bright spot on this football club. Literally, I mean, he's been the most productive guy. Right? You look at the games against the Saints. Right? How they basically handled them. From a defensive standpoint. Now, Saquon Barkley had to pull off a couple big plays to win that game. So their defense is keeping them in games. They probably should have beat the Falcons if Saquon doesn't drop that, 4th and 1, whatever play that was. Like, so they've had their opportunities. But moving forward, as the season goes along, is this something that they can really hang their hat on, not being really good offensively? No, I don't think it's sustainable. And at some point, you're going to run into one of the better teams. You're going to run into the Lions or the Vikings in a playoff game. And you're going to have to be able to score because these teams can score. And they've been proven consistently that they can score. So is it a bad roster overall? No, it's not. Is it well coached? Absolutely it isn't, right? And it starts with the head coach, Nick Sirianni, I think, who we all can agree, even with Eagles fans, he is the ultimate douchebag that we have as head coach in the National Football League. Now, I read reports that some of the players were telling him, "Hey, man, we want to see more from you. Like, we want you to talk more, be more boisterous." Well, that ain't the way, right? Especially not in Philadelphia, where the fans are going to let you know either way how they feel about you. So if they don't win, I think he's gone anyway. I don't really think he's a good head coach to begin with. So I think he should be gone regardless of what happens. And they need to kind of not maybe rebuild, but they need to reconstruct some things in order to get the best out of the talent that they do have moving forward. I think this is a pretty solid roster, but overall, they're not living up to the expectations that I think a lot of people expect from them, especially after coming so close to winning a Super Bowl a couple years ago against Kansas City. So, but the Chiefs, the Eagles, to me, very lackluster performance after a bye week. And to me, that's something that it reflects a lot on the head coach. Okay, you want to talk about not being prepared? That's the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, they went into this game this weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers with a new quarterback at the helm there. They made the switch from Gardner Minshew to Aiden O'Connell, and it wasn't really any better, honestly. Now, I get it. They were down two of their best receivers, Devontae Adams, who has a hamstring, and then the other guy, I believe, Myers, I believe he was hurt too. But listen, before leading up to this game, you go back to the beginning of the season, this team messed it all up, right? They didn't make any real legitimate offers to maybe go and move up and get a quarterback, at least not that I know of, right? And I could be wrong. Let me know in the comment section. But you rolled out this, and I keep saying this, they rolled into this season thinking Gardner Minshew was going to be the guy of the future. And he couldn't have been, right? He's been on 4 teams in the last 6 years. He's a backup, guys. And Aiden O'Connell was no better, right? Hell, I would have been more impressed if they even reached out to Tom Brady and say, "Hey, man, you want to come out of the announcer's booth and come play a couple games for us?" That would have been better than what they have today. Now, they go into this game, and what we learned about them is that they need a quarterback, which we already kind of knew. I mean, even when if Devontae Adams does decide to play, which the Raiders can make him play at the end of the day because they don't have to trade him. And right now, what the Raiders are asking for might be a little bit too rich for some teams. So the reality is that, they were probably better off keeping Derek Carr at the end of the day. Shipping him off was probably not the answer unless you actually legitimately knew that you could go and get a talented quarterback, whether it's the draft, whether it's going in free agency and signing a guy like Joe Flacco, who's winning games and still in his age and his tenure in the league, versus Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, right? And that doesn't help. They've had key turnovers in these games. You go back last week, Minshew throws the 100-yard pick six to Patrick Surtain. And then this week, you got Abdullah fumbling at the goal line, which kind of changed the outcome. I won't say change the outcome, but it did swing the momentum in that game against the Steelers. But their offensive game plan is very predictable. And it's very basic. But again, it's because of the quarterback play that you get. So, the offensive coordinator, he's come under a lot of fire. But at the end of the day, who puts them in power? It's the head coach, it's the GM, it's the ownership. They did not do a good enough job to construct this team. And I'll say it. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Antonio Pierce is not a legitimate National Football League head coach. And I'm not trying to be mean. I don't know the guy personally. He may be a really good guy, but you pumping out your chest and saying Raiders doesn't make you a qualified head coach in the National Football League. It feels like every time I turn my head and I'm watching the Raiders, I see him in a press conference. It's like, yeah, I'm Antonio Pierce. I used to rock with the Raiders when I was a kid. Like, I'm from Compton, whatever. It doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. It isn't going to help you win games in the league. Now, I will say this. He does keep his composure for the most part, right? But from a tactical standpoint, he's probably the least tactical coach in the AFC West, not even in the AFC conference overall. The Raiders, to me, are in purgatory right now until they can get a quarterback, right? They're pretty much dead in the water. And Davante Adams, he may never play a down again for the Raiders. All right, there's a good chance, right? It's 50-50 at this point. And then the next thing you got to worry about is Max Crosby going to start getting disgruntled, right? Because he's a talent in himself, and he's trying his best to lead this ball club. But at some point, enough is enough, and everyone has a breaking point. And his may be there sooner than what we think, right? So he may want to force a trade. If I'm the Raiders at this point, you move off all these guys and you start over again. Maybe try to move up and get a quarterback this upcoming draft because there's really no plausible free agent out there that can maybe help you win right now, or unless you go and make a trade for someone like a Josh Dobbs from the 49ers, somebody like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing out stuff here. But at the end of the day, the Raiders are no better than where they were this year and even last year. If anything, they've gotten worse because of the turmoil with Davante Adams. So what will happen to them? I think they're going to miss the playoffs again, right? And I think they're going to probably finish last, if not close to last, in the AFC West. Okay, let's do a little bit of real or nah here on NFL matchups. The first question I want to start with is, are the Detroit Lions legitimate Super Bowl contenders, real or nah? Now, let's just start with Sunday's performance against the Dallas Cowboys. A very dominant is an understatement. I mean, they literally beat down the Dallas Cowboys so much they started throwing to offensive linemen to prove a point that they are so dominant. We will score with offensive linemen against the Dallas Cowboys. So Jared Goff is looking really, really good. Very consistent season for him. Probably one of the better seasons he's had, since coming over. Obviously in Detroit, he's getting even better under Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, I believe, the offensive coordinator. Now, this team also does have playoff experience. You saw what happened with them last year. They made a deep run this close to achieving winning the NFC Conference Championship. It wasn't for some questionable decisions by their head coach and just some mental lapses too. They could have been easily playing for a Super Bowl. So you look at the whole total landscape of NFC and AFC, right? Are they one of the better teams in the NFC? Absolutely. I think it's them and the Minnesota Vikings and maybe the Green Bay Packers, right? Right. So those are the top three teams in the NFC because the 49ers are struggling. We've seen that. Tampa Bay, a little inconsistent there, right? So, but they're right up there. They're either 1A or 1B in regards of being the best in the NFC. And if you look at the AFC, I think they can compete with Patrick Mahomes. I think they can compete against the Ravens or the Texans. So, this team overall is constructed very well. You got talent all around you on offense. Your line is probably one of the best, if not the best, in all of National Football League. You have legitimately two good running backs in Montgomery and Gibbs. You got really solid wide receivers in Amon St. Brown and in Jameson Williams, who can stretch a defense and beat you over the top, right? Sam Laporta is one of the better tight ends and young tight ends in the National Football League. And like I said before, your quarterback is playing solid football. And on top of that, your offensive scheme led by Ben Johnson is phenomenal. Ben Johnson will be in head coach next year in the National Football League. if he decides to, right? He stayed this year because I guess he wanted to accomplish the mission of winning a Super Bowl. And right now, I feel like they are on par with that. So the question is, are the Detroit Lions legitimate Super Bowl contenders, real or not? That's a real. They are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. All right, moving on. Let's talk about a team in the Northeast, and that's the New England Patriots. And the question is, real or not, should Drake Maye continue to start for the New England Patriots? Now, let's take a look back at what he did this past weekend in his first NFL start. And arguably, it was against a really good team in the Houston Texans. Now, they didn't get the win, right? But I'll talk about that here in just a second in regards to wins and losses with his development. Now, he threw for like 242, 43 yards on 33 attempts and 3 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. But I know he did throw 2 interceptions, which, okay, I get it. He's young quarterback. But that's pretty good. But what we did see also, too, is that he has an incredible arm, and the connection that he was establishing to Kayshon Boutte, another rookie wide receiver, I believe he's a rookie, looked pretty good. Now, listen, he doesn't have a lot going for him. Honestly, the Patriots don't have a lot of talent. The offensive line is not great, right? And then he was running for his life still. I believe he got sacked at least 3 times that I saw by the Texans, all coming from Will Anderson Jr., who is a monster in himself. So when it comes to wins and losses for this team now, and maybe the Patriots fans, I think they've come to terms and saying, you know what? It's not about if we win or lose this year. It's about, can we develop? Can we get better? You know, now you have a rookie quarterback at starting games. Now you have a rookie NFL head coach and Coach Maye there, right? Can they develop? Can they get better each and every week? And I think they can, right? Drake Maye did show a lot of signs, some good things that maybe Jacoby Brissett was limited in. Jacoby Brissett is never been known to be a guy that pushes the ball down the field. Drake Maye can do that. We saw that. And there were some opportunities, and he took advantage of them. So, you know, is it going to be perfect? No, it's not going to be. He's going to make a lot of mistakes still because he's still learning the league. So at the end of the day, is it real or not? Should they continue to start him? Absolutely. This is a real. They should continue to start him because it's only for his own benefit. The only drawback is that because your offensive line is not any good, you put him at a risk, and he could get potentially hurt, and that you don't want, because then that'll kind of bring him back down, and it's counterproductive to his development. But the question is should Drake Maye continue to start for New England Patriots? And that's a real. All right, real or not, is Will Levis a starting quarterback in the National Football League? Before I get to my decision on this one, let's take a look back and look at some of his stats from this past weekend. So I believe the guy only threw like 93 yards or 95 yards this past weekend in a loss to the Colts. That's not good. I mean, there's kids in high school, there's kids in youth football that are throwing for more than that. And I believe he's averaging 3.5 yards per attempt. Yeah, you heard that right. 3.5 yards per attempt this past weekend against the Colts in a loss. Like, this guy, a lot was said about him. I thought he had a chance, but every week he looks more discombobulated than the week prior to that. He's inconsistent. He's a turnover machine, and he doesn't have the accuracy, and he just lacks overall consistency that you need at this particular position. Now, you look at their offense, right? Is it like one of the best offenses in the world? No, it's not, but they got talent, man. You can't tell me DeAndre Hopkins is a bum now all of a sudden. Calvin Ridley was targeted 8 times this past weekend, and he had 0 catches, I think, right? 0 catches. And you got Tyler Boyd. So you got DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and you are struggling to throw 3.5 yards per pass? Come on, right? I mean, luckily for them, they were in that game because Tony Pollard had a really good game and the ground game was better, right? And so, you know, I didn't think this team was going to be overall great, but my gosh, I thought they'd be better than what they were. And I think they're really limited by the play of Will Levis. I think at this point, the organization needs to just move off from this guy and say, you know what, Mason Rudolph, you're a veteran in this league. You've played games before. We're going to give you the keys, because right now Will Levis needs to be benched. He sucks. He literally sucks at playing in the position. Now, I'm saying that I've never played a down of quarterback in the National Football League or college or anything like that. But my God, it's terrible. It's terrible. So at the end of the day, do I think he is a starting quarterback in the NFL? That's the real or not? It's a nah. It's a hell nah. And he isn't. the Tennessee Titans need to move off this guy sooner than later, because I still think I won't say they have a chance, but they got a decent squad. But quarterback play is very bad at this point, and it's prohibiting them from actually winning games. So is Will Levis starting quarterback in the National Football League? Hell no. Nah. All right, let's take a look at my previews and predictions for Week 7 here on NFL matchups. We're going to start off with the first game on Thursday night between the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints. When you look at this game, defensively, I think both teams are fairly even. If you look at their rankings per PFF, they're both ranked 12th and 15th respectively between the Saints and the Broncos. The Broncos are slightly higher, which is rightfully so. They've been a really solid defense, and New Orleans has been a sleeper type of defense. But offensively, this is where things are a little bit skewed in the sense where Denver Broncos are coming in 25th overall out of 32 teams in the NFL as far as offensive ranking, where the Saints are kind of like in the middle of the pack. Obviously, they started off really hot. But right now they're coming in at number 12. Now, when you look at their strength of schedule being played, obviously Denver Broncos have had a pretty easy road. You look at some of their matchups earlier on in the season, and you can see how they got 3 wins out of the season. But when you look at New Orleans, they are ranked currently 8th. So they've had a little tougher road. I really like New Orleans in this matchup at home. I think regardless of who the quarterback is in this particular situation, whether it's Spencer Rattler or Derek Carr returns back, I think the Saints have a better shot at it just because of the quarterback play will probably be more likely better. Now, as far as injuries are concerned, this is going to be a big thing here right now. Patrick Surtain Jr. is listed as questionable as of today. So, due to a head injury, I think he suffered a concussion last week, Sunday against the Chargers. So that's a big blow for them if he does not play. I think he will have a go at it. Because they're going to need him, right? Because the Saints do actually have some pretty solid and talented wide receivers, so that's only going to help them. Now, if he's out there, their defensive ranking will probably drop, but that's one of the key notable injuries that are going into this particular game. I know the Saints still also has some injuries as well. Derek Carr is still doubtful at this point, and they got some other issues going on with their offensive line. I know their center is out on the injured reserve, and he's one of the better centers in the National Football League, so that's going to be a problem for them. But overall, I like the Saints in this particular game just because of the quarterback play. Spencer Rattler did show me something a little bit, even in a loss against Tampa Bay at home, so I'm going to go with the Saints in this one. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the game over in London, the early morning game between the New England Patriots and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, both of these teams are pretty low overall. They're both 1-5. Jacksonville has a lot of pressure, unlike New England. I think New England, everyone understands, is they're in a rebuild mode. Obviously, they're rolling out a rookie quarterback who just got his first start last week against the Texans in a loss, but I think there's no expectations. Whereas I feel like Jacksonville and Doug Peterson, there is a lot of pressure. I said this early in the beginning of the season. Even if you go back and look at my AFC South predictions, there's a lot of pressure on the team because they do have talent on this club, and right now they haven't been living up to it. So, but when you look at it, you break it down defensively. Patriots started off pretty well, but then they just kind of fluttered the last couple weeks, and so they're ranked 28th, where Jacksonville's defense isn't much better at 22nd. Offensively, the Patriots are really they're no good. And granted, a lot of it is because Jacoby Brissett has been the starting quarterback. We did not see him push the ball down the field. I expect Drake Maye to continue that trend, pushing the ball down the field, unlike Jacoby Brissett. So that I think that offensive ranking may move up slightly, maybe not much, because they still have a lot of problems on the offensive line. And New England's had a really tough schedule. They're ranked 5th on strength of schedule right now, whereas the Jacksonville Jaguars are ranked 12th. But both of them are 1-5. Both of them need a solid win here. But I think Jacksonville needs it more because Doug Peterson's coaching career depends on it. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville to win this game for a couple of reasons. Number one, they have more of a veteran quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And number two, they've been in London or that area for the last 2 weeks now. So I think they'll probably be a little bit more comfortable, acclimated to the environment, whereas New England had to travel across and only get a couple days to acclimate themselves. But I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars to win this particular game. Now, we got a fun one here in Atlanta between the Seattle Seahawks and the Atlanta Falcons. Listen, both teams are vying to maybe be in contention for winning their division. Now, More so the Falcons. I mean, they're sitting really good now at 4-2. Seattle just suffered a a tough loss against a division rival last week, Thursday, I believe it was, against the San Francisco 49ers. The Falcons are an interesting one. Like they've won 4 games. A lot of them have been really, really close games that have gone either way. They did steal one from the Eagles early on in the season, but defensively, they're not that great defensively. They're ranked 24th right now according to PFF, whereas Seattle's defense is a lot better. They're at least a top 10 according to the rankings there. Offensively, both teams are within the top 5 best offenses right now. Seattle likes to push the ball down the field. They'll throw it a little bit more with Geno Smith. Same thing with Atlanta, but the only thing Atlanta's got going for them, they got really 2 solid running backs in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. And their wide receivers core is not bad either. You got led by Drake London. You got Ray McLeod, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts are starting to get in the flow of things. So I really like what they're doing there. Kirk Cousins is starting to get more and more comfortable. You see it every week. He's playing better and better. He's getting really more comfortable with this offense. So Seattle, to me, they've been pretenders for a while, and their strength of schedule is really helped them out in the beginning of the year. Now they're starting to face teams with a little bit better caliber, and you're noticing them starting to falter a little bit there. It doesn't mean they're a bad team, but they're not a team that I can really rely on. I'm going to go with the Falcons on this one to win at home, because this is a big matchup. I mean, honestly, these are 2 teams that are contending for the playoffs and maybe even for a division title. Atlanta's right there with Tampa Bay, so but I really like Atlanta's chances overall to win this game, even though their defense can be a little bit more improved. But I really like Atlanta in this particular matchup. Okay, we got the Bengals and the Browns. Big news Tuesday. Amari Cooper shipped out. He's no longer a Cleveland Brown. The Browns come into this matchup at home, 1-5 start versus Cincinnati, who is 2-4. Now on paper, the Bengals to me are a better club right now. They got the better. They're playing better at quarterback. Joe Burrow is doing literally everything he can. And, they kind of escaped New York there Sunday night, but they got the win. Defensively, the Bengals can be had. They are ranked 27th right now per PFF Pro Football Focus, and that's not good. Whereas Cleveland's defense is still relatively good. They're ranked top 6 in the league, so if they got anything going for them offensively, this is where they differ a big time. So it's funny is that the Bengals defense is not great, but the Browns defense is good. But then you look at the Browns offense, it sucks. And then you got the Bengals offense, which is ranked number 1 right now per PFF. So that's good for them. And the crazy thing about it, the Browns have had a crappy schedule and are still 1-5. They've had games against teams that were winnable games, at least according to their strength of schedule right now. And they're ranked 27th. So they've had one of the easiest stretches so far, and they still can't get the job done. But honestly, at the end of the day, I like the Bengals in this matchup. They have a fighter's chance of making the playoffs. It's going to be tough. But if they got to just go on a run here, and it continues on with a win in Cleveland against the Browns. The Browns just need to pack it in. I don't think a lot of big changes. Well, one big change needs to happen, and that's the quarterback, right? And they're going to have to figure out what's going to go on with that. But I like the Bengals in this particular matchup to win against Cleveland on the road. Let's see here. You know what? Let's go back. Let's go back over and look at the Titans and Bills. Bills, other big news for them. They traded for Amari Cooper, which is going to definitely help their offenses because it's going to give Josh Allen some more talent and weapons to throw to. It's not going to just be the Josh Allen show. And so right now, overall, they're one of the still top 5 teams overall from a power rankings perspective. Defense, they're kind of middle of the pack for the Buffalo Bills. Offensively, they're top 10 in most categories there. And then you look at the Tennessee Titans, they're just blah, right? Defense, 23rd. Offense, 32nd, dead last, and which not surprised because of look who's the quarterback there. Strength of schedule, Tennessee Titans also have had a pretty easy schedule thus far. The Bills, I guess you can kind of say maybe, but I mean they had the run-in with the Baltimore Ravens early in the season, Miami, but they actually caught Miami. Well, that's the game that Tua got hurt. So on paper, that should have been a better matchup. But so far, they've been able to win the games they needed to win. A tough loss in Houston a couple weeks ago to the Texans. But I think with Amari Cooper, and I believe he's going to be good to go. I don't think there are any problems with him. I think he should be a quick start for the Buffalo Bills this Sunday against the Titans. But when you compare the quarterbacks, I mean, quarterback rating, Josh Allen's getting a 75.6, where you look at Will Levis is 44.9. I mean, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And you can't win in this league if you don't have a great quarterback. So for me, this is an easy one. I like the Buffalo Bills to win this game and win it rather quite comfortably, if I may say so myself. Okay. All right. Let's go back. Just jump back over. Let's look at the Green Bay Packers taking on the Houston Texans. This is going to be a fun matchup. Definitely a fun matchup. Both teams are evenly across the board, defense and offensively. Two young quarterbacks. So this is going to be a fun watch. Now, still no Nico Collins for the Houston Texans. He's going to be out another couple of weeks because they placed him on IR. But defensively, both teams are right there. One thing I will say about the Texans defense, and I'll say something about the Green Bay's defense, is that the Texans defense, they get after the quarterback. I mean, and that's going to be a thing, right? So how well can Green Bay match up against them? It'll get, particularly Will Anderson is going to be a big question mark. Offensively, CJ Stroud is still doing his thing. They're ranked ninth, at least top 10, even without Nico Collins. Slight dip, but not too much, right? And then you look at the Green Bay Packers, especially on defense. Let's start there. Their turnover rate is crazy. They have tons of takeaways, led by their safety, Xavier McKinney. He's doing a fantastic job there. Defensively, other than that, pretty middle of the road, I would say. They're ranked 19th. Offensively, they're getting it going. They're spreading the ball around. If you have their receivers in fantasy, it's kind of like it's a revolving door. 1 week it's Christian Watson, then it's Romeo Dobbs, then it's Dontavius Wicks, then it's Tyler Kraft. It's like who knows who Jordan Love wants to go to that day, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on how you look at it, but this is definitely going to be an interesting matchup. Now, you can see the screen here. I'm going to go with the Texans. I think it's going to be a close one. It's going to come down to whoever has the ball last, and I think that the Titans will have just enough to win this game and get the win over the Green Bay Packers. So definitely one of those ones you want to circle for Sunday. I know I'll be sitting down locked in on that game. Okay, another game that maybe might not be circled for a lot of people, but I'll circle it because I kind of am a fan of the Colts, although, I don't know why. I really have an affinity for Joe Flacco and what he has been able to do. Now, you going into this game, both teams are not really all that great. The Colts defense has not been as good as I thought it was going to be. They're ranked 21st right now. Offensively, the same. They're second to last in offensive ranking per PFF. But Joe Flacco has done everything that he can to win a couple games for this team and keep them in the conversation. Now, I don't know if Anthony Richardson's going to be a go. Right now, he is listed. Actually, he's not showing up on any of the injury reports, so he may be a go. And if that's the case, I'm still going to go with the Colts anyways. You can see, just because if Skylar Thompson is the starter or even Tyler Huntley is the starter, it doesn't matter who is for the Dolphins. They're just pathetic at this point. Without Tua, they are lost. Defensively, they're not as good as I thought they were going to be going into this year as well. They're ranked 25th, and offensively, they're just ahead of the Colts at 30th right now. And they've played one of the easier schedules per PFF right now at the 31st hardest schedule. So whereas the Colts have played a tougher schedule, they're more battle tested, right? But this was a no-brainer for me. I guess no matter who the quarterback is, I'm going to go with the Colts, just because the Miami defense and offense have just been abysmal. And Mike McDaniel's Mike McDaniel, he just hasn't really adjusted anything. And I don't know if you could do anything, honestly, with the roster the way it's currently constructed. It's not much you can do, especially if you're missing your main piece, which is your quarterback that you just paid a lot of money to. So good luck to them. All right, let's look at a big matchup, probably the biggest matchup of the weekend. You got the Detroit Lions 4-1 heading into Minnesota US Bank Stadium to take on the undefeated Minnesota Vikings. This is not only a big matchup for the NFC North, it's a big matchup just in the NFC and overall in the National Football League. Detroit coming off of a ass whooping they've handed to the Dallas Cowboys on the road this past Sunday, and the Minnesota Vikings had the week off, so they had some time to prepare a little bit more. When you break these teams down, you want to give the slight edge to Detroit. Defensively, they're one of the better defenses right now. They're ranked second, like per Pro Football Focus. Offensively, Jared Goff has been really consistent, really on point. They have two really great running backs in Jahmyr Gibbs, and I believe, what's the other guy's name? Is it Montgomery, if I'm not mistaken? I forgot his name at the top of my head, but playing really well. You look at Minnesota defense. Listen, stat-wise, you look at them, you're like, well, they're ranked 20th right now, but I don't think that number genuinely reflects Brian Flores' scheme, the way he's been able to confuse quarterbacks and get after it. I think this is going to be a hell of a matchup. Offensively, Sam Darnold has been as consistent as you can be. My only problem with Minnesota recently is that they haven't been able to finish games. So I think for this particular one, it's nothing against Detroit. I think they're a fantastic team. I think they'll probably be in the talks for the NFC Championship game anyway. But for this one game, because they're at home, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings, and they had 1 week off. And I think the Aiden Hutchinson thing might be it may not be a huge problem, but you just don't replace a guy like that overnight. Now I know they'll have this next man up mentality, but I think there's something they're going to have to work out the kinks. So I'm going to give the slight edge to Minnesota in this particular game. All right, we're just moving right along here. Let's take a look at the Eagles and the Giants. We all know what the Eagles have been. Obviously, they barely squeaked by the Cleveland Browns. Their head coach has been a complete buffoon. And offensively, they're a little inconsistent. When they get it going, they look really well. A.J. Brown came back last week. Devontae Smith played. Saquon Barkley continues to need to get the ball a little bit more. Defensively, they're middle of the road. They're ranked 14th. When you look at the Giants, though, the Giants defensively are a pretty solid unit. Now, I know they had to place Kayvon Thibodeau on IR, but they still got Spider-Man, a.k.a. Brian Burns, and you still got the man-child, Dexter Lawrence in the middle there, both help bolstering that front seven. So, they lost this past weekend, but it was rather a close game. I think this team is ready to go. Malik Neighbors, I believe, should be a go. I haven't heard anything coming from them, so he's not listed on players' injuries right now. So I think he might be a go after coming off of that concussion. So he should be good to go. As far as the Eagles are concerned, they should win this game. But it's a divisional game. But I think the Giants at home, as long as they don't make crazy mistakes, I think they have a chance to win this game. So I picked them. And when you look at the grading between Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones is been graded better than Jalen Hurts at this point. So if you're looking at two quarterbacks, and I get it. Daniel Jones is not a great quarterback. I understand that. But he's playing better right now than Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is continuing to throw the ball away a lot more. Turn the ball over. I'm going to go with the Giants at home to win in a close one, in a close divisional NFC East matchup, but I'm going to take the Giants on this one. All right, let's look at the Raiders and the Rams. Big news for the Raiders this week. Devontae Adams forced his way out of Las Vegas. He is now a Jet. We'll talk about that game here shortly. They head into L.A., again, to play they played the Chargers early in the year, but now they head back to SoFi to play the Rams. Now the Rams, a lot of injury-plagued team. Even with that said, I feel like the Rams are a lot better suited to win this game. They've had the second hardest strength of schedule played so far, and I think that's kind of prepared them a lot better. Whereas the Raiders, the 22nd. And the Raiders are 2-4, and I know LA is 1-4. But in just in general, I mean, listen, Matthew Stafford is better than any quarterback that they're going to throw out there for Vegas. So, and I don't even care who he's throwing to. I like Matthew Stafford over Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, whoever the hell the Raiders decide to throw out. And to me, this was a no-brainer. And I think they're just going to be better coached anyway. And you guys, if you've watched me, you listen to my shows. Not a big fan of AP as a head coach. So you look at overall the rankings, the Raiders are ranked 31st in defense efficiency and 28th in offense. So not really well, good at any point. The Rams fare a little bit better as far as offensive rankings are concerned at 19th. And that's considering no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nakua. Their offensive line has been mixed matched damn near every week, and they still happen to be a better ranked offense than the Raiders. So give me the Rams in this one, and this was a no-brainer to me. And I think the Raiders are going to feel the. I know why they needed to trade Davante Adams, because he quit. He quit on them, and they needed to get that out of there so that way they can clear the air and reset the deck, as they would say, and move on. But they don't have the talent. I think the Rams still have the better talent and the better coach team. All right, Panthers and Commanders. A battle. Well, it should have been a battle of two young quarterbacks, but it's not, because Bryce Young was benched. Jaden Daniels comes into this game with a 4-2 record. Close loss against Baltimore. They got some holes, obviously, but he showed a lot, man. Honestly, to battle with Lamar Jackson, to keep that offense, to keep that team in the game with their offense. Carolina is really not still a great team right now. They're almost bottom of defensive ranking. They're ranked 17th in offense, whereas the Washington Commanders are ranked 10th, and then their defense is 26th. So Carolina will get some matchups that favor them, right? Deontay Johnson and that secondary should be favorable in some cases there. Xavier Legette may have some opportunities. Chuba Hubbard been running the ball pretty well. But overall, I think the Commanders are the better team. I think they have the better horses in the end. They got the better quarterback. And no offense to Andy Dalton, he's doing all he can. He's a veteran, right? He doesn't have the same skill set as a Jaden Daniels. So, but I like Washington in this particular one. I think they're going to continue to roll and improve to 5-2 on this young season. So, shout out to them. All right. We got another big matchup here. We got the Chiefs 5-0 heading to Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers, who are injury plagued at running back position, right? Jordan Mason, questionable. We all know what's going on with Christian McCaffrey. He's still out on the IR. Chiefs, obviously, they've been missing Isaiah Pacheco, but no problem. Now, listen. This is a losable game for the Chiefs, right? San Francisco 49ers are still a formidable team. I know they've struggled a little bit, right? But they definitely have the pieces to beat Kansas City. Defensively, though, I mean, they're both even. Both defenses are really good, and I think that's what helps the Chiefs and even the 49ers to that extent, right? Offensively, the Chiefs are still ranked 6th overall. But I think a lot of it is just because they've been able to just find matchups. Travis Kelce has been doing his thing. Juju Smith-Schuster stepped up in their last game. And then you look at the Niners side of things, Brock Purdy, the last time we saw them, they lost to the who was it? They lost to the well, no, sorry. They won. They won. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm losing track of my weeks. So they beat Seattle on Thursday night, which in a really good performance by Brock Purdy and George Kittle. They got it going there. As long as they can run the football, they will always have the ability to win games. So it's going to be a tight one, but I trust Patrick Mahomes more than probably anybody in the National Football League, right? So regardless of what's going on around him with talent and all that other stuff, I think that he's just that dude. And people may complain and say, oh, well, they get the calls. And when you look at their rankings, Brock Purdy's played better football as an overall. But Patrick Mahomes just has that it factor. And I can't go against that, man. I just can't. So I'm going to take the Chiefs in the Super Bowl rematch to win on the road in Santa Clara against those Niners. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be close because we've seen that with a lot of the Chiefs games. They just don't blow out anybody because they don't have the talent to right now. But they find ways to win. All right, big matchup, Sunday Night Football. A lot of eyes going to be in this game for a couple reasons. Number one, Davante Adams, will he play? Has his hamstring miraculously just healed because he was traded? Maybe the air on the plane over to New York helped heal his hamstring. That's one thing to look at. Then you can look at the Steelers, right? Talks about Mike Tomlin possibly starting Russell Wilson or splitting time with Justin Fields, which I think is a total disaster. But the Jets overall, coming off of a tough loss, a game they probably should have won if it wasn't for their kicker and all the penalties that they had, just self-inflicted penalties that killed drives for them or took points off the board, right? You would think that Davante Adams can maybe remedy that. Aaron Rodgers probably will play a lot better maybe now because he has a familiar target to throw to. And you look at the Steelers side, like offensively, they still I know they played the Raiders, and I get it, right? They won the game, but I don't know if this what they do is sustainable enough. And if the Jets can score at a higher clip, then the advantage goes to the Steelers. But Steelers defense is still elite. They still got T.J. Watt. The Jets still cannot protect Aaron Rodgers. He got smacked a couple times on Monday night. So I like the Steelers in this one. I think in the end, TJ Watt's going to come up with some big play, strip sack, fumble, whatever the case may be. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to find a way somehow to muster a couple points. One thing that Justin Fields does have going for him is his escapability. If a play isn't there, if it breaks down, he can take off and run. Whereas if you kind of go with Russell Wilson, you probably you lose a lot of that. He's a better thrower, but you probably lose that ability when plays break down, which has happened a lot for the Steelers. And that's probably why they're not ranked very high offensively. But my gut telling me to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the Steelers in this one. All right, we got two games on Monday Night Football. We'll start with the big matchup. This is also another big matchup between the Ravens and the Buccaneers. I'm really excited to watch this one. You got Baker Mayfield, who's playing really, really good football right now. And then you got Lamar Jackson, who's also playing really good football as well. Both teams defensively almost, right after another, playing really well. Offensively, the Ravens have figured out what they want to do. They want to take it back old school and run the football, and they have the tools to do so, especially with Derrick Henry. And then you got Lamar Jackson as a change of pace, and it's working well for them at this point. Now, one thing I will say about the Ravens defense, it's not as good as it traditionally has been. And not to say that it's fallen off the rails altogether, but they haven't been as dominant as we kind of always led to believe with them, that their defense is so dominant. But this year, teams have been able to take advantage of them a little bit. And then you got the Buccaneers, who also too, right, can be taken advantage of a little bit. Baker Mayfield does have a tendency sometimes to give you one, whether it's an interception, fumble, whatever the case may be. But I like the Ravens in this one. I think they're going to come in, they're going to establish the run, and with Derrick Henry, and they're going to get after it. I think they're going to get out. But I think this has the potential of being a high scoring game, which the way the Ravens run the football, how could it be? I think Lamar Jackson's going to let it fly a little bit more. I think he's going to let the air out of the ball, and he's going to do his thing. But I like the Ravens in this matchup against Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football. All right, and the final matchup, you got the LA Chargers on the road heading to the desert to take on the Arizona Cardinals in this one. The Arizona Cardinals, one of those exciting teams, only because Kyler Murray just kind of runs around doing his thing. I believe they're coming off a bye. But when we lost all them, they beat the Niners on the road, come from behind win against the Niners. So I think, that kind of helped bolster their spirits a little bit. Kyler Murray right now has the higher ranking as far as percentage wise. This is because I think they utilize him more. I think that's going to change with Justin Herbert a little bit more. I think they realize that they're going to have to throw the football. They can't just sit back and run. They just can't sit back and run. Gus Edwards is on the IR, who's been a really key contributor for the LA Chargers. But something about Arizona on a Monday night and Kyler Murray. Now I know they have their own injuries with Marvin Harrison Jr. He may miss some time this week. But I like Arizona in this spot. I think it's going to be a good game. It may even be a shootout, but I do like the Cardinals to win this game. Just the simple fact of the quarterback play. I think Kyler Murray is in a better situation right now than Justin Herbert is. But I can definitely see these teams going back and forth, trading shots. Because if you look at their rankings, their Chargers do have the better defense overall. But offensively, the Cardinals, the Kyler Murray is just a different kind of dude, right? So I think I give them the slight edge there. So, all right, there you have it. Those are my Week 7 previews and predictions for the week, man. Make sure you guys review it, watch the tape again. Let me know what you guys think. All right, before we close out the show, let's talk about some fantasy impact players that you can maybe get on your waiver wire or even try to negotiate via a trade to help you and your fantasy football team out. We're going to start with the quarterbacks. Now, a lot of these guys are probably taken, so these might have to be some moves you make via trade, but they may be worth your time and consideration. First, we'll start with Justin Herbert. Now, you're thinking, well, Jim Harbaugh likes to run the football, yada, yada, yada. But guess what? I think in the very near future, Justin Herbert's going to let that thing fly. I think that Greg Roman understands that they're going to have to throw the football a little bit more, right? Gus Edwards has been injured, but Justin Herbert showed this past week against Denver that he can throw the football. Mind you, it was against a Denver Broncos team that was without Patrick Surtain throughout most of the game, but I still think that they're going to have to rely on Justin Herbert's arm at some point. So I think he's definitely worth a trade if you have a team that needs a quarterback. Maybe you don't have a really true number one quarterback. You just got a guy. He might be someone that may be a sleeper that you may want to go out and get a trade, or if he's available in the waiver wire, you want to pick him up. All right, next guy, we're going to stay out west with Matthew Stafford. Now you're probably thinking, Matthew Stafford, listen, I think they got an incredible matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders this upcoming week. The Raiders secondary is, for lack of a better term, trash. Okay. Now I know no Puka Nacua, still no Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp should be getting healthy and be available here in the next couple of weeks or so. So that's really good news for anyone that wants to go and get Matthew Stafford. Look, I think for the most part, he's done okay. I mean, literally throwing to some random guys, right? So if you get Cooper Kupp back in the fold, he's going to get better. So he's one of those other guys, I think, that he might be stashed away on someone's roster right now. So you may want to approach that player and say, hey, listen up, man. You want to make a trade for Matthew Stafford? Because I think there is some potential good upside for him and his value. And I believe he's available too in a lot of leagues, at least 50 to 55% availability in most of these leagues between ESPN and Yahoo. So he's definitely worth a look there. All right. The last quarterback, Andy Dalton. And I know you're going to say, oh, well, he plays for the Panthers. I get that. But Andy Dalton is a veteran in this league, and he can still sling it, right? He had a touchdown this past weekend against the Atlanta Falcons to Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette. Not saying he's going to go throw for double-digit touchdowns every game, but I think he can move the ball in this matchup against the Commanders this week. The Commanders don't really have a great secondary. And they just lost Jonathan Allen for the rest of the year. They're talented defensive linemen. So guess what? That pass rush is going to be a little bit less toothless as they play each other this week. So I think there's a good possibility. Again, these are guys that I'm not going to say they're going to come and just win you the league, but maybe they can hold serve for you. Maybe you have a quarterback that's on a bye week or a quarterback that's injured. Whatever the case may be, you need some type of positive coming from your quarterback play. Andy Dalton, definitely one of those guys I think you consider going into week 7. All right, let's talk about running backs here. First one, Tyler Algier for the Atlanta Falcons. This one's interesting because he splits time with Bijan Robinson, which is crazy to me. But Tyler Algier is very talented. Now, he has taken a lot of production off of Bijan Robinson. So you Bijan Robinson fans out there, you're probably like, dang, man, like, what do I do, right? Because Tyler Algier is getting some goal line red zone chances as well. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield just as well as Bijan Robinson. So I feel like if you can grab a guy like this, you're getting a production from a number one guy who's really a number 2 guy in the offense there as far as running backs are concerned. So definitely, I don't think he's available in a lot of waiver wires, but again, another guy you maybe want to trade for. Another guy who might be available is Tyler Goodson. Jonathan Taylor, still no word on his availability going into next week here in week 7. Sermons was kind of the guy there. Really didn't perform well. I think he got outperformed by Tyler Goodson this past weekend. So I think he's a guy too that can catch the football, can run the football. So he's definitely worth your consideration this week as one of the running backs if you need a running back this week. Sean Tucker, stellar performance this week. Rushed for over 130 yards and a touchdown, and caught up a long pass for a touchdown, which he scored on. With Rachaad White out, it's going to be him and Bucky Irving. So I think there's some value in that. And I know he's available in damn near pretty much every fantasy league that there is right there. So if you are number 1 in the waiver wire, you need a running back, I would probably strongly consider Sean Tucker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if you can get in line and get him. I know a lot of people are going to be clamoring for him, kind of like what happened last week with Tyrone Tracy Jr., who had a stellar performance last week. So Sean Tucker is probably in that same boat this week moving forward. All right, wide receivers. Let's go head out west to Arizona, and let's talk about Michael Wilson from the Arizona Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. may be out a couple weeks, so guess what? There's going to be some production that will kind of slide over to Michael Wilson there. So I can definitely see him stepping up, getting those number 1 targets between him and Trey McBride. Definitely a guy that you maybe want to consider if you're in one of those deep fantasy leagues. Michael Wilson, you might want to check him out. Christian Watson coming off an injury. If he's available, maybe via trade, maybe you want to go out and ask someone, maybe, hey, you want to trade for him? He's good. I would say Jordan Love is spreading the ball. I think it's fair to say that the Green Bay Packers probably have collectively the most talented wide receiving group, right? I'm not talking about star power or anything like that, but just overall, like all these guys, it seems like every week there's one guy that just goes off for the Green Bay Packers, and Christian Watson may be one of those guys from a week-to-week basis. So you might want to think about staying along those lines with the Green Bay Packer wide receivers. Romeo Doubs, coming off suspension, had a really solid performance last week. This past week, is another guy you may want to continue to kind of monitor a little bit. But he missed some time. Jordan Love still rewarded him by giving him the production and the targets that you need, especially if you need another wide receiver. So, as far as tight ends are concerned, Hunter Henry. Well, listen, young quarterbacks tend to throw a lot to tight ends because it's kind of like a safety blanket. So Hunter Henry is definitely one of those vertical threats down the field. I think Drake Maye and him are going to develop a pretty good relationship. So if he's available on a waiver wire, you may want to go get him. I think Drake Maye is going to throw the ball to him tons this next coming weeks just to get comfortable. So I like Hunter Henry there. Here's a sleeper for you guys here. Jatavion Sanders for the Carolina Panthers. Listen, this guy can play. I paused for a second because I had to think about what I was going to say, but this guy can play, man. I think he's starting to get some nods from Andy Dalton, right? We know that they got Deontay Johnson, who's their legitimate number one wide receiver. Xavier Legette is a fantastic talent that they're going to continue to develop there. But I think this guy, Sanders, is legitimately one of the better, I won't say one of the better tight ends, but he's an up-and-coming kind of tight end. I get it. He's still young, but he's worth a pick. If you are desperate for a tight end and you don't have the assets to make a trade, I would say maybe go out and try to find this guy on the waiver wire, right? I don't think anyone's really talking about this guy, but you heard it here first on NFL Matchups. You may want to go and target this guy, especially if your tight end one is on a bye week. You may want to go and get this guy because I think they'll have some opportunities this week against the Washington Commanders, whose secondary really isn't that great. So I like Jatavion Sanders in this matchup for him this week. Now let's look at some defenses here. The bright spot defense, I think a lot of people are not thinking about. New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints have a favorable matchup against the Denver Broncos this week. I believe it's a Thursday night game. I think it is Thursday night. I believe it's a primetime game. I know that. Denver Broncos offense is not good. Bo Nix, although they've managed to win some games, Bo Nix really has not established himself as being a very consistent quarterback, which I get. He's a young guy. And what harder place to go and be productive and consistent is in New Orleans. I believe this game is in New Orleans against a team that can get after it, right? You know, they're a little stung right now. They've dropped 2 in a row, I believe, or 3 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. They're looking to get back on the winning side of things. I think this is a perfect matchup for their defense. So I like the Saints defense from even moving forward. I think they're one of the better defenses in the National Football League, but more particularly, again, if you are a guy or a player that needs a defense to hold you over until your number one defense comes back, Saints is definitely my certified stamp of approval this week against the Denver Broncos. Washington Commanders, I know I just talked about their secondary not being great, but listen, you're playing the Carolina Panthers at the end of the day. I think there may be some chances for them to get after the quarterback, maybe force Andy Dalton to some throws he doesn't want to make. So in that regard, I feel like that's again, this is it's a high risk, high reward type of situation with these next two defenses, and that's including the Washington Commanders. So they can be scored upon, but I think from a defense, they can score too. So again, if you're in a bind and you need some defense out there, I would probably go with the Commanders. And then finally, the Green Bay Packers, to me, now they got a matchup against the Texans, and this can go either way for them. But one thing I will say about Green Bay is that they do force a lot of takeaways. If you haven't heard of Xavier McKinney, this guy is a takeaway machine. I believe he's got like 5 interceptions the first 6 weeks of the season. So definitely they can do that. They can get after the quarterback as well. Although they're in a tough spot because the Texans offense can move the football. Now, Nico Collins is not there, so you got to worry about it. But Stephon Diggs stepped up pretty nicely. Tank Dell did pretty good. They're running the football with Joe Mixon. So there's an opportunity again. It's a 50-50. But if you are in a pinch, then you may need to plug a Packers or Commanders team in there for your defense. So there you have it. Those are my fantasy impacts of the week for week 7. Love them, like them, leave them. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. And good luck to you guys. All right. Well, thanks for watching the episode. That's all I got for this week on NFL matchups. Make sure you guys tune in next week, Wednesday, again for another edition of NFL matchups for week 8. Also, check me out live on Sunday on NFL Sunday. Wake up with me, Ryan Flowers, at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube. You guys know where to find me. Check the links in my bio. Until next time, this is your boy, Ryan Flowers, a.k.a. Clutch Sports Talk. Like I always say, never settle till the work is done. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.